Golden Sense Style. I'm Stuart. 8 Hype Beast fragrances. I've been collecting almost 5 years now. It's 4.5, 5 years. And Fragcom normally hypes up fragrances big time. I know I bought a bunch of them. And so I'm going to go over that 5-year span and talk about fragrances that were hyped. See how good they are today. Are they still good? There's a couple fragrances on here that were hyped before then. But yeah, it's just like, are fragrances that were hyped in the past still good? Are people even wearing them? So we're going from today to 5 years ago. Let's get to it. Fragrance number 1, this is Jean-Paul Gaultier's Le Mal Elixir. And this one is one of like a couple of current like hype monsters. This was Fragrance of the Year for Fragrantica last year for 2023. It is still super popular. It really reflects the current trends because it is sweet. There's 3 different kinds of sweetness. There's vanilla, there's tonka, and honey, and that's pretty much all I get for the first at least 45 minutes. It's just tons of sweetness. And then it starts to kick in to a couple of other notes that really define the original Le Mal, and that is lavender and mint. And then it starts to smell a little bit more like Jean-Paul Gaultier Le Mal Le Parfum. But it's still sweeter than Le Parfum. It will always be sweeter. There's so much sweetness, but it's definitely a lot of similarities. This is a beast mode fragrance, though. It is, I mean, at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half longer in terms of longevity, at least an hour longer in terms of full projection. The weird thing about this one, though, is it actually has a tobacco note in it, but it's so sweet that tobacco is completely washed out, so I don't really understand the point. The level of sweetness is, you know, it's almost comical, but I guess that's, you know, I'm a little bit of an older guy. So for younger people, this kind of thing is really in. It's just a little bit sweet. I found when I really first got it, I was really analyzing it. I loved it. Now that I've started wearing it, yeah, the sweetness can get a little bit annoying. Fragrance number 2, this is Azzaro Wanted by Night. This was hyped pretty early on in my Fragcom experience. The neat thing about this one, though, it's not hyped anymore. The Most Wanted is taken over as the number 1 from Azzaro. But this was kind of a breakthrough fragrance because when I first started getting into it, yeah, it was just like Azzaro was like a cheap house. They had Chrome and a couple of others, but they didn't have anything like that everybody wanted. And then this came out and then everybody got into it. It really was hyped for a while. Now it's seen as kind of, you know, an also-ran a little bit. It's still a good fragrance, though. It still matches sort of the modern DNA. There's a lot of fruit. There's some cinnamon, and it is a tobacco fragrance. It is pleasant. The performance is good. But yeah, it's just not the same that it once was. Fragrance number 3, this is Rasasi Hawas. This was probably the most hype fragrance, at least in my experience, in the 5 years of Fragcom, which is weird because this is a 2015 fragrance that was largely overlooked by Fragcom. And then I can't remember if it was winter of 2020 or winter of 2021. It just seemed like Fragcom finally woke up to it and everyone was talking about it, all the bigger channels anyway. And it was like, oh, you need to get this for summer. And it was pretty inexpensive back then. At first, I couldn't find it at all, and then I ended up getting it $45, $50 I paid for it. It's now $75 with inflation and everything. It's a rare commodity. It is both sweet for a summer fragrance, which is a hard thing to do without being cloying, and it's also really strong performance for a summer fragrance. You put that together, and you have a lot of demand. And at the time, and when you speak about North America, this is still important. Because, you know, even though they've re-released Invictus Aqua 2016, I think I haven't been able to find it in North America. It's mostly available in Europe, I believe. So yeah, this is, you know, this is your best bet for that Invictus Aqua DNA, at least if you live on this side of the pond. Really good performance. It's very fruity. There's plum. There's apple. I think there's a bit of lemon, so there's some citrus components too. There's a lot of ambroxan in this. It gives it a little bit of sweetness. But yeah, this one is a must-have if you're a young guy, especially right about now in the summer. Fragrance number 4, Versace Eros. Now this one, again, 5 years ago, much more hyped than now, but this one is still hyped. And the reason I know this is, like a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago, a friend of mine around Christmas said, yeah, I'm thinking of buying something for my boyfriend. And I told her, I said, look, first I showed her to go online. And then I said, well, you should get this. If you go on the discounters, which is what I told her to do, this is always front and center. So she ended up with Eros. Look, it's a lovely fragrance. It's still a classic. It's still a big seller. It is a bigger seller than this, for sure. And it does have a lot better performance than Dylan Blue. I think that's probably the most underrated factor for Eros is the fact that, I get at least 10 hours. And it's not super expensive. The problem I have is that the apple and the lemon die down after an hour or two, and then you're just left with a lot of sweetness. There's a little bit of mint in here too. It's a really nice fragrance. I do like the bottle, but yeah, the performance is what really makes this one special. Fragrance number 5 was all Jeremy fragrance. Boy, oh boy, he had like 5 or 6 fragrances that he talked about all the time. And he really hyped up, and I'm sure he made them a lot of money. This is one of them. This is Salvatore Ferragamo's F Black, and he always said that this was the Wolf of Wall Street fragrance. I never quite understood that, but I do like it. But now, though, everyone thinks of this. This has really lost its hype. Since he started hyping it, since he stopped hyping it, it's just become like a, pretty solid cheapie. And the price has gone down, actually. I think I paid $40 for this. You can get it for like $30 now. It's a really nice fragrance, though. It's kind of powdery. It's got a lavender base, there's some vanilla, and this has black pepper. Performance is okay. It's not exceptional. But, I think Jeremy liked this style of fragrance, which is a sort of a powdery, inexpensive fragrance with a hint of lavender, because there's another one similar to this that he really liked, but that had a strawberry bite to it. This one has a pepper bite to it. But yeah, it's not hyped like it was, but I still think it's a solid cheapie. Next up are 2 fragrances that were hyped well before I got into Fragcom. This is what I grew up with. I think I got in 1992, I got a bottle of this. And that's 10 years after it was released. It was, back then there were only so many fragrances for men, so it was only so far you could go. But this one was super hyped. Everyone was wearing it. Unfortunately, though, it's still a really good fragrance, but this particular one has really been raked over the coals. I would say everything about this has been weakened, from the longevity to the projection and to the richness of the fragrance. And I know this because when I started collecting 5 years ago, I still had my old vintage bottle from the 90s. And and then I compared it to this, and it was like vastly superior. So unfortunately, this one's been watered down. It's still wearable, I suppose, but you have to keep your hopes in order because it has been affected. Another one that was hyped in the past. This came out in 78, and this was 82. So they were both kind of popular at the same time. This one was more high-end. This one was more mass-appealing. But this one, it has been changed. It's been thinned out. But I still managed to get, this is Polo Green, by the way. I still managed to get, at least 5 hours of longevity. I get a reasonable amount of projection. It's tobacco, pine, oak moss, very old-fashioned, but very, very gentlemanly in a lot of ways. I still think, even though this is old-fashioned, I still think this is an iconic one. And even though it has been thinned out, this one is still worth a purchase. You'd have to think twice, though, before you get another bottle of the new watered-down Drakkar Noir. Finally, we have Oud Noir by Versace. This is a fragrance that was never really super hyped, but I found that this is one fragrance where I did a single fragrance review, and it is still going. So this fragrance did really well in my review. It was like a channel that I had before this one. It was like 4 years ago. And it smells like oud wood. It's a good beginner oud. This is just easily, for me, the best Versace fragrance. The dent, it's beyond a dent now with this one. I've worn it so much. It's got oud, especially early on. It's got cardamom. It's a fresh oud. It's got a lot of saffron and black pepper. I think this one is absolutely amazing. It is a little bit more than your other Versace's, but it's more than worth it. Performance is good too. So this one, I would say, was mildly hyped at the beginning and is now still going strong, I think. Not as hyped as before. But anyway, the hype has changed over time. Things have changed a lot. Prices have gone up quite a bit in 5 years, but Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Take care.